I'm not afraid of snakes, or toads, or bugs, or worms or mice. The things that girls are scared of, I think are awful nice. I'm pretty brave, I guess, and yet I hate to go to bed. For when I'm tucked up warm and snug, and when my prayers are said, Mother tells me happy dreams, and takes away the light, and leaves me lying all alone, and seeing things at night.
Seeing scary things at night.
Sometimes they're in the corner. Sometimes they're by the door. Sometimes they all just creep and crawl across the bedroom floor. Sometimes they come when I'm asleep. Sometimes when I'm awake. So softly and so silently, they make me scream and shake. Sometimes they're as black as ink, and other times they're white. But color makes no difference when you're seeing things at night. Once, Mother caught me being bad, fighting in the street, and Father sent me up to bed without a bite to eat. I heard some noises in the dark, and up my ears did prick. Those things were gathered all around, and planning something sick. I was so very scared that time. I got an awful fright. It's always when I'm bad that I start seeing things at night. Lucky thing I'm not a girl, or I'd be scared to death. Since I'm a boy, I duck my head and then I hold my breath. When I hear something horrible, crawling up the stairs, I promise to be better, and I always say my prayers. I'm certain that's the only way that I can make it right, when I've been very wicked and start seeing things at night. And so, when other evil kids tempt and coax me into sin, I try to squash the devil's voice that urges me within. At night, the things creep closer, and they aren't very nice. They want to eat me up without even thinking twice. Eventually, these evil things will drag me out of sight. I hope I don't keep doing wrong and seeing things at night.
Number 1.
I've been reading stories on the site for a long while, yet I never had quite the gusto to create an account. I've had things happen, one of which I'm telling you right now. Here I am today, Jack. Nice to meet you all. Now, onto the story. Yes, it is another Ouija board story. And yes, I didn't suspect any harm to come of it. At least, not this bad of harm. I loved paranormal stuff since I was a wee lad. I loved all the ghosts, non-humans, the existence of the ethereal plane, all those things that would keep a little boy wondering and entertained for a few months. I've heard about Ouija boards before, but I had never really been interested in them. I was more of an electronic voice phenomenon fanatic. I was, and still am, a teenager who was just extremely interested in something, and too damn rash to understand what might happen because of it. On to what happened. I live in a little country town, and for that reason, I've had hours upon days of free time, and one of my favorite subjects of research was an entity who called himself Zozo. One country day, my friend had come over, and we were both bored. He claimed to be knowledgeable in the usage of Ouija communication, so we set up the board on the living room floor. We have hardwood floors. Keep this in mind. He had opened a session, and I held my breath, when all of a sudden, nothing happened. The planchette held its ground, and I watched as we tried to talk with the nothing inside of my home. It may have been because it was 4 in the afternoon, or it may have been because we weren't in the correct mood, but it didn't work, so we packed it up, and went off to trek through the woods outside my little property. Later that same night, around 11, we decided to try again. My friend, Cameron, set the board up in the living room, lit some candles, and was beginning to open a session when I said what was maybe the stupidest thing I could have ever muttered. I turned to Cameron and whispered, "Hey Cameron, we should try and communicate with this Zozo thing." He agreed. We opened session, and he began asking questions. He didn't ask for, which may have been another bad point, but he demanded for the presence of Zozo to come to the board. I know now that was a bad idea, but then I just thought that's how you did it. I knew nothing of anything of Ouija ritual back then. The planchette started going crazy. It wasn't going to any certain letters or numbers, just throwing itself around, trying to throw our hands off. Then, it went still. Cameron asked, "Who are you?" And it spelled out, "I am Zozo." I was excited. I'd read so much about this thing, and it's finally here on the board in front of me. Despite all the horrible stories I had read, I was excited. We had made a list of questions to ask, and Cameron was about to ask another, when, I swear to all of you, that planchette tore itself from our hands and went hurtling across the floor. Cameron immediately started freaking out, and I, again, knowing nothing, just smiled at it. He grabbed the planchette, closed session, and we went to bed, after Cameron was sure he had closed it properly. Nothing happened for the rest of the night. No noises or apparitions or anything. Cameron went home the next day, and a few days passed. Then things started happening. Bad things. First, it was the doors. I had to go to our garage freezer to get a frozen pizza, and I was gone for maybe a minute. But when I came back in, anything that was hinged or slid was open and on the ground. I was freaked out, but I'm a spiritual donkey. I'm extremely spiritually stubborn. Nothing really affects me. So I just put everything back where it was supposed to go, and went on with cooking my pizza. Then, the next day, it happened again. I did as I did last time, and just continued with my day, slightly shaken, if anything. It was silent for about 3 days. Then, whatever it was, started to get personal. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I could see my room. Yet, my eyes weren't open. I couldn't move. And I felt like something had grabbed onto my lungs and was forcing the air out of them. I've never had anything close to sleep paralysis before, so this scared me a lot. Also, right next to my bed, there was this thick black blob thing. It wasn't that something was there, per se, but more of it was a lack of light and air. It literally looked like I was staring into despair. Still, though, my eyes weren't open. After that happened, I refused to sleep in my room. I still won't go in there, because when I do, the place seems so heavy. That's really the only word I could think of to describe it. That isn't all. I would wake up from the couch, which is 7 or so feet from the door to my room, with scratches on my arms, and I'd hear what sounded like something running on claws on the hardwood floors with my bedroom door wide open. I make a point to keep it closed. The last thing. My friend Cameron has been getting texts and voice messages from me when my phone's texting is broken. We still haven't figured out how, and I haven't been calling him. He showed me a text. He's received 3 in all, and it was all gibberish, like someone was mashing keys. I listened to the voicemails, and they sound kind of like someone is whispering, but I can't quite make out what it is. I always hear scampering and sounds, and I've taken to living with my mom to get out of that place for a while, and think everything that it doesn't follow me here. What do? I admit I shouldn't have played around with something I didn't understand, and I've gotten enough hazing from others about my stupidity for it. But I'd like help.
Number 2.
My story of an encounter with the supernatural happened when I was 17. I had an earlier experience of some strange phenomenon when I was about 4 years old, but the one I had in my teens was much more frightening. It was 1987, and I was working at a downtown Salt Lake City movie theater. This theater was originally built around 1905 and was a playhouse until it was converted into a movie theater during the 1950s. Somewhere between 1955 and 65, the balcony area was converted into a second theater, separating the top and bottom of the original theater into two separate theaters. At the time, we used to play a lot of artsy type films. Then around the holiday seasons, like Halloween and Christmas, the theater would play those films that went with those seasons. Now that you have the background set, here's my story. I was working at this theater as an usher, concessionist, cashier, and part-time projectionist. I also did some backup manager stuff, as our crew was quite small, and we shared duties with another theater in the downtown area, the Old Center Theater. Halloween was coming up, and business was really slow, so our theater manager, I'll call him Ted, decided that if his crews at both theaters were down for it, we could host a Halloween party at the Utah Theater. This theater had quite a rep for being haunted, with many employees having experiences, so most of us being kids, late teens and early 20s, we thought it would be fun. At the time, we were showing Return of the Living Dead Part 2 in one of the theaters, one of my favorite movies of all time. And the plan was we'd party, have a few drinks, then watch the movie, and finish the night with a big staff sleepover. Well, the party got started, and I got pretty drunk. Then someone's boyfriend, of one of the staff, said he'd brought a Ouija board and thought we could try it out. We were all pretty drunk, and most of the people backed out of it. Myself, though, thought it would be interesting, because I had never played with one before. So about 4 of the dozen that were there decided to try it out, including me. So we did. We asked the board if there were any spirits that had a message for us, or wanted to talk to us. The first time I felt the pointer move by itself, it freaked me out. It then started answering our questions one by one. Then it would only answer mine. For some reason, it started to focus on me. So I asked who it was I was talking to. It gave me an initial. It was a D or S. I don't really remember. I asked some other questions, and to make a long story short, it said it was a little girl, around 10 or 12 years old, and that she had died in that theater. So after about an hour of playing with this thing, the atmosphere began to change. People started to get really scared. And by now, most people had stopped playing with the board except for me. I was playing with it by myself. When the owner of the board saw what I was doing, he freaked out, grabbed the board, and said he was done for the night. I was upset with him, but was getting tired and was ready to get some sleep. So I asked Ted, the manager, where we were going to bed down for the night. Well, apparently, the Ouija board had freaked everybody out, and everybody wanted to leave. Well, now I was pissed. I'd planned on staying there the night, and there was no way I was going to go home to my parents as drunk as I was. So I asked if I could still stay. Ted thought about it for a minute, and said okay. So we cleaned up, set up my sleeping bag at the manager's office, and walked everyone out the front door. The assistant manager, we called her Mel, handed me the keys to the entire theater, and asked me if I was going to be okay. I said I'd be fine. She gave me a hug, we were close like that, let her out, made sure everything was locked up tight, and headed back down to the manager's office. By the way, this place was huge. It had a main theater, a balcony theater, a basement, and a sub-basement, which, by the way, connected to the old Salt Lake City sewer system built back in the 1880s. It had been bricked off in the sub-basement. The main theater had the old stage from its playhouse days, with scaffolding over the stage and a staircase that went down to the old dressing rooms. It was really late. I was still buzzing from the booze, but I was getting hungry. We had ordered pizza, and still had some left, so I fired up the popcorn machine, got me a big Coke, and decided since everyone chickened out, I wasn't going to let that spoil my night. I was going to continue with the plan we had, which was to watch The Return of the Living Dead, Part 2. Since I knew how to work the projector, I threaded the film through the projector and loaded it up on the platter. These were the days of non-digital film, and sat and had a private viewing in an empty theater of one of my favorite films. It was awesome. Anyway, after the film was over, made sure the projector was turned off and cleaned up my mess. I was getting a little wide-eyed and busy-tailed now and decided to start exploring the theater. So I went into the manager's office and opened up my surplus duffel bag and dumped out the contents on the floor. It consisted of one pair of woodland camo BDUs, a pair of jungle combat boots, a buck knife, a camo headband, and face paint, not to mention a big wooden baseball bat. After I changed and applied the face paint, I went on patrol throughout the theaters. We had a large number of tall plants in our lobby, and I spent a great amount of time running from plant to plant and hiding behind them. Then I'd crawl on my belly through open areas and run screaming up the ramps to the upper theater. I kept screaming out, calling the spirit's name, telling it to come out and face me like a man. I did this for a good hour, maybe 2, running around the place, screaming like a madman, and acting like a hooligan. I finally got really bored and stood in the middle of the lobby and blurted out, "You're all a bunch of wimps!" As soon as I said that, the lobby got really cold, and a strange darkness began to gather. The next thing that happened was I heard a thunderous boom that shook the place, and a voice screamed out,
Get out.
I ran into the manager's office, locked and barricaded the door, crawled under the desk, and stayed there the rest of the night. The next morning, the assistant manager, Mel, showed up early and brought me breakfast. She was supposed to open for the day anyway, and since I had her keys, Ted had given her his. So she walks into the theater and heads to the office. She unlocks the door but couldn't get it open since I'd barricaded the door. So she starts pounding on the door and calling my name. So I crawled out from under the desk, moved the barricades, and opened the door. She asks if I was okay, then stops and looks at me. She could tell I was visibly shaken, dressed like some Rambo reject, with dried camo paint on my face. I managed to crack a small smile and told her, "Do got a story to tell you." That's my ghost story. One of them at least. After that night, and for as long as I worked there, I kept having issues with the spirits. One shoved me down a flight of stairs. Another shoved me into the big popcorn maker. Then, while I was talking to another employee in the back food prep area, behind the concession stand, a knife flew across the room and impaled into the wall, right next to where my head was leaning against. I kept seeing a little girl in a polka dot dress. Others saw her too. Each time I saw it, or someone else saw it, something would happen to me. I had a plastic cup that I used to drink Coke out of explode on me. Just all sorts of weird things. Later on in life, I reported the story to a Utah ghost hunter group, and got no response. The theater was sold my last year of high school to a playhouse who wanted to turn it back into a theater for live plays. About 5 years later, it closed up. I can remember walking past the theater after it was closed up, all boarded up. I always got a really creepy feeling something was looking back at me. One time, I was in my mid-20s, married, and with children. My family and I were living in Provo at the time, and we took a trip into downtown Salt Lake with my wife's mom. They went shopping, and I went off wandering. I walked past that old theater and noticed a small crack in the boards covering the old cashier booth. It was connected to the inside of the theater's very long hallway that went back to the lobby. I took a peek through the crack and could see all the way down the old hallway into the lobby. It wasn't very lit. It was pretty dirty inside. When I peered through the crack, something caught my eye. A dark shadow started to gather in the lobby and formed into a large oval shape. It was pitch black, but had substance to it and started to drift slowly down the hallway towards me. I got that really creepy but familiar feeling. I jumped back. Not sure if what I saw was real, then peered again through the crack. It was getting closer. I didn't look again. I started to walk very fast away from that place, and haven't been back since. I hope you guys have been enjoying my videos lately, despite the fact I haven't done a Let's Not Meet in quite a while. Don't worry though, I'll get back on some of those soon enough. Anyway, Halloween is at the doorstep, and I am personally looking forward to it. Yeah, it'll be the first time since the past 2 years that I'll be able to celebrate both this holiday and Christmas without feeling, well, down. What are some of your Halloween plans? I hope they'll be great ones. Oh yeah, speaking of Christmas, I have something pretty cool planned for that occasion. For my videos, I mean. I hope I can pull it off like I imagine it, though. And with that, I wish you all a very happy, fun, and safe Halloween. If it's fear you're after, welcome home.